Today I'm going to dive into a cinematography breakdown of the Coca-Cola Christmas ad, which I'm led to believe is at least somewhat AI generated. So a cinematography breakdown of an AI generated advert is, that's a whole can of worms to unpack at some point. First of all, I haven't watched the advert yet, so I'm going to watch that and just see what I think. Here we go. Holidays are coming. Okie dokie, let's unpack that a little bit. Okay, I think I know what I want to say now. That took a little while to kind of come to terms with, come to grips with, and work out what it was about it that is worth talking about. This, to me, reeks of someone in creative who could control the way they wanted things to look, but then the method that they are using to control this, one would assume, is through a series of prompts and trying to generate out where they want something to go. I'd be curious to see exactly which process they use to do this, but it just feels like an approximation of someone's idea of people being awed and happy. And I have this rant saved up that I make occasionally about Star Wars and how the original Star Wars films were good because George Lucas wasn't George Lucas. He was just some guy making a film. And to a greater or lesser extent, I mean, people cared, but no one cared like he wasn't George Lucas yet. So that meant that all of the people who were involved in the film, they had a certain amount of freedom and control over what they were doing because they were talented and skilled individuals working within their departments. And that's why it has this magic. As soon as you get to the point where you get to the prequels and digital technology has come along, George Lucas now has much more control over what he wants in the scene and how the scene fits together. You know, he can tweak it and he can hone it and he can perfect it. And also, he is George Lucas at that point, and what he wants, people will listen to because he's George Lucas. So of course, and this feels like on a micro scale, a little bit like that. It's like someone who ultimately shouldn't be making all of these decisions is making all of these decisions, and that's one of the things that makes it look terrible. Now, look terrible is such a strange thing to say because on the face of it, if we look at any of these shots, I don't know, like this one here with the dad and the little girl, it's like it's an okay-ish sort of shot. You know, you got a warm light coming into the little girl just there on this side, and then this side's a little bit cooler, and you know, there's stuff in there which, from a cinematography point of view, you know, you might look at this and go, oh yeah, they've got a cooler fill light, they've got the warmth coming in on this side, and then the dad's on this side, and she's got nice catch lights in her eyes, and there's all this bokeh and interest in the background, and they're both smiling and they're both happy. But they're both smiling, they're both happy, and they're both posed in such a way, and they're not. When you get people on set, they breathe and they move and they exist and they swallow and they blink, and they don't think about any of these things that they do. And sometimes when I'm working with an actor on set, and perhaps they're less experienced, if you start to give them too many notes on something, they start to overthink just existing in a scene, and just breathing and just doing the normal things becomes a little bit stilted and hard for them. That is what these shots feel like, to me, it's like the idea of trying to create a happy scene where a little girl turns around, her dad's there and she's smiling and they're looking at the Coke van coming in, but then you're siphoning out all of the stuff that's just so baseline, so like in the background, subtleties. It just feels fake, and like they can only generate a certain number of frames for each thing, and they don't want to have tons of movement in them, and they want it to be nice and clear so nothing warps and freaks out. I don't know, it just does not feel great. And then, like in this shot, the way he's holding the bottle and the way he moves, from a cinematography point of view, like he's relatively nicely lit in some terms. You know, he's got some light coming in on this side, and then he's got his downside over here. He's got that nice little catch light in his eyes. I wouldn't necessarily, if I was putting a catch light in his eyes, I wouldn't necessarily make a catch light that shape. I might go for a round one if I'm, you know, being really finessed and trying to make it like just beauty. And what's weird is like the catch light is different on both eyes. AI does not know. It does not know that the catch light needs to perhaps mirror the same shape in both eyes because you're getting the same light on both. It just feels weird. His hand and the way that the bottle raises just feel a little bit off. There are so many things about it that just don't evoke a sense of life, I guess. And when you're trying to, Coke, okay, or anyone who's making an AI advert, when you're trying to create something that you are selling as AI, people are going to have a guttural response to it, especially when it's something around a very human time of year, you know, peace, goodwill to all men and people coming together and family and all of that kind of stuff. That's an association that people are going to have with Christmas. So the moment that you bring in something which you're saying is not real, it's an AI generated thing, and you've done it like this, you've done it like it was a perfectly manicured CGI kind of fest and all the rest of it, people are going to have a reaction to it because they're going to look at it and they're going to criticize these things because they're glaringly obvious. You know, it's not like I'm stretching to find these in it. It is just that they are there, and you're letting people do these adverts. You're letting people do these adverts who don't have the skill set yet to bring it to life. People who have been animating CGI or animating in the real world have for years been honing those skills and working on the nuance that goes into bringing a character to life. And now you're giving it over to people who probably have never really thought about that at all. You know, maybe they just work in the ad agency, maybe it's the creative team who are just coming up with this stuff, and they don't know what to look for, and they don't know why something will be a certain way. So you're kind of stripping all of the talent away, and you're just leaving the idea. And sometimes the idea, without the talent to execute it, is going to be abysmal. That isn't unique to AI, it isn't unique to CGI, it isn't unique to animation or filming or anything. It is just when you have a concept which is so rooted in something which means something to people, you're going to get a bit of a backlash. Now maybe the Coke adverts over the past, goodness, 20, 30, whatever years, they just don't have the impact anymore because it's the same thing again and again, no one cares, but it is trying to sell something at the end of the day. So I think that when you're trying to piggyback on that, you've got to be respectful of it, and I just don't think that they are, and they're trying to do this, perhaps, going back to my point, to get headlines, to get people to talk about something which is maybe past its sell-by date. But it is fascinating to me that this would be put out, and now online, I think there are a few versions of this I've seen where people have remade it, and I wouldn't go as far as say they've done better, but they've done a different job of it. And when people on the internet in their spare time can do a better job than the ad agency that you're paying, perhaps the ad agency you're paying is just there for the shock and the awe and they were, happened to be in the room at the time, they're not necessarily the people who are going to make the best work. And it is intriguing that biggest competitor, Pepsi, they've gone with a very different tack for their advert. They've never had this kind of thing with their adverts, same as Coke have around Christmas, but they're doing a very real thing with real people. You might like it, you might hate it, you might tune out from it, but it won't have the same guttural response of, ooh, I don't like that, it doesn't feel real, it's uncanny. Try harder, Coke. Try harder, everyone, with AI, because this is just another example of something which is an idea without any creative implementation or skill whatsoever. So yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it. I was never going to be a fan of an AI thing particularly. There are a couple of AI generated channels that I actually do watch and like, but behind them there are talented people actually doing work. This reeks of no work, and I think alongside the uncanniness, that is a massive turn off from something like this, which is meant to be Christmassy. Hey, that is my take on it. Leave your comments below. What do you think? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you loathe it? Let me know.